I had a panic attack every Friday night at that meeting. It sucked, but I was highly motivated to change. I was highly motivated to get over my anxiety attacks. I didn't believe it was possible, but there was another part of me that believed it had to be possible because I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. And maybe this is where you're at right now. I was like, I can't keep living like this. I can't stay sober with all this anxiety, but I can't drink because to drink is to die. I had to figure out, like, even though I think anxiety is forever, I can't drink, but I can't stay sober like this. Then I started to believe that maybe it's possible to change, and I started to take actions that started to change my brain. And that's what's on offer for you, is to take action and to do things that can change your brain. Hello, courageous bestie. Today we are talking about how to stop anxiety attacks when you're sober. Yes, you can learn how to stop having anxiety attacks in sobriety. I didn't know this when I was starting out. I thought anxiety was forever. I thought anxiety attacks were forever. It seemed to be forever. That was my mindset at the time. I've come to realize it's not true. I no longer have anxiety disorders, and I haven't had an anxiety attack since 2012. So over a decade now, right? So it is possible. It's been possible for me and possible for a lot of my students and clients. And it does start with that willingness to believe that maybe things can be different. That's how all change has to start, with, a desire to change, and then a willingness to believe that maybe it's possible. Maybe it's possible that other people had that change, and maybe it's possible for you to have that change. And so I want to specifically dive into, and also a disclaimer is that I'm not a doctor. I'm not your doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a sobriety bestie here, talking to a courageous bestie, right, about how to live free. I'm talking about freedom and self-empowerment. That's what I'm all about here. And I think it's really important that we choose to have empowering thoughts, empowering mindsets, empowering beliefs. We can change our beliefs anytime. When we change our beliefs, which may take a while to do, but when we actively work at changing our beliefs, our thoughts will change, our emotions will change, our perspective will change, our actions will change. And when our actions change, our life changes, right? And so it all starts right there. And I want to wind back to when I was a year and a half sober. I was the secretary of a Friday night recovery meeting. And it freaked me out. I didn't want to be this, I didn't want to do it. They have elections and they decide who's going to be it, right? This is not something that I wanted to do. I did not want to be in front of a group of people talking. I had a phobia of public speaking. I didn't want any attention on me. I was super anxious. I was having constant anxiety attacks. The last thing I wanted to do was to be in front of a bunch of people and leading something. I did not want to be in charge in any way, like up in front where everyone's looking at me and I'm reading like a preamble of a meeting and like that, right? And so I didn't want this, but I felt like I should stay committed to the recovery program and do what was asked of me. And so I agreed to it, right? But I didn't want to do public speaking. I didn't want to speak in front of a group ever. I never wanted to. Like when I was in high school, when they'd go around the room reading, like we'd be reading out loud, I would strategically plan a bathroom break for when the person in front of me or the person in front of them was about to read. When I knew I was coming up to be my turn to read out loud, I would bail for like 10, 15 minutes until I knew that it would already be skipped me, and I would come back into class to avoid reading in front of a group. Like I did not want to do this. And so what happened was I'm a year and a half sober, 18 months sober, and I'm up in front of this group. It was a big like a popular Friday night recovery meeting in San Francisco, and people would get super dressed up for it. There was like a nickname to this group. It was called like the toothbrush meeting, because the joke there, I think, this was never my vibe, but the joke there was that you bring your toothbrush because you don't know who you're going to go home with. So people got dressed up nice. Like, I don't know if that really happened, but people got dressed up really nice. This was like the Friday night out. Like people were no longer at the bars. Now they're at the recovery meeting or whatever, right? So anyway, there was a lot of people there. They were looking good. They were looking at me. It freaked me out. I didn't want to be there. And I would legit have a panic attack every Friday night while sitting up in front of all these people. It was horrendous. It really sucked. I would be holding the thing that I was supposed to be reading, right? And while I'm actually reading it, that was what was actually happening in reality. But my head is like derealization, or I don't really know all the terms for it, but I was having this almost out of body experience. And I had this other voice very actively happening in my head, which was like, run, throw the paper to the person next to you and just run, go buy cigarettes. I hadn't smoked in like over a year at that point, but it was like, run out of the meeting, get out of here, go home, never come back, stop, panic. My mind was going a million miles an hour. My emotions were out of control, and I would spin out into an anxiety attack in front of these people every Friday night. It was Yeah, it wasn't easy. I stayed sober through that time. I still haven't had a drink since I got sober, so it's been since 2009, right? And so that was 2011, I guess, when I was at that meeting. I know what it's like to have a lot of anxiety attacks in sobriety. I know what it's like to feel like anxiety is forever. I know what it's like to feel like there's no way out of it. And I see a lot of people, even people who are well into their sobriety or who aren't even sober at all, and think that anxiety attacks are forever. Now, again, I am not a medical doctor. I don't know your circumstances if you're having anxiety attacks. There are things beyond like anxiety that may be going on, like if maybe some electrical devices, right, might be stimulating your nervous system, maybe some environmental toxins, maybe something in your brain. Like I have one of my students, there's something in his brain. He only has one of something where they're supposed to be two. It's like a rare disease. So there are conditions where there might be something else going on that's a little bit different. So I'm not saying that this is the rule, but what I'm saying is when we open our mind to a possible healing, we are more likely to get that possible healing or outcome than when our mind is closed. So it gives us a good reason why we want to open our mind to a possible new life. And we start if we're really not believing it, we start by believing that maybe it's true for somebody else. Like that's how when I first got sober, I believed that maybe my sponsor, maybe my friend, maybe whoever that I knew in the recovery community, maybe they actually had a year sober and they weren't lying about it. I thought anybody with more than a year sober was probably lying about it because I could never imagine going more than a year sober or even a year sober. But I was willing to believe that the person who had 2 more months than me sober, that maybe they actually didn't drink and maybe I could actually get another day, another month, whatever, sober. And so just starting to believe that somebody else has had that change is how we can open up our mind to the possibility that maybe there's a change available for us too. So the thing here is, and this is like what I consider to be an ultimate truth, this is my truth, is that there's freedom available for all of us. I don't know how much freedom is available for you or for me, but I know that there's a freedom available for us. And it has to do with how we hold our limits, how we hold our problems, how we hold our challenges. So how are you holding your challenges and your limits when it comes to anxiety or anxiety attacks? Are you believing that they're forever? Even if they've always been there, it doesn't mean they're always going to be there. Like I know that for me specifically, I'm an example of they're not always here, but they were always here, right? And I have a lot of students and clients who it's the same. They always had anxiety and now they don't. I talked to one of my students from 5 years ago yesterday on like a Zoom, and she's saying like, I don't have anxiety anymore. You helped me get rid of anxiety forever. And she had it her entire life. So it's possible to completely change our brains. It's called neuroplasticity. This is not woo woo. This is yes. This is we can change. Our brains can change. That's just reality. That's just facts. The facts are our brains can change. Often they need our guidance, our work. We have to do the work to change our brains. They don't just rewire themselves. Some of the stuff that we go through in early sobriety does heal on its own. Some of the stuff, the damage that alcohol does to our brain, now that we're no longer damaging our brains can heal, right? Their healing happens on its own. That is for sure. And also we can do work. We can train ourselves with certain thoughts, with certain practices. Mindfulness is amazing in order to deliberately change our brains into a way that we want it to be. So I had a panic attack every Friday night at that meeting. It sucked, but I was highly motivated to change. I was highly motivated to get over my anxiety attacks. I didn't believe it was possible, but there was another part of me that believed it had to be possible because I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. And maybe this is where you're at right now. I was like, I can't keep living like this. I can't stay sober with all this anxiety, but I can't drink because to drink is to die. I almost died from alcohol. So I had to figure out, like, even though I think anxiety is forever, I can't drink, but I can't stay sober like this. So maybe anxiety isn't forever. That was the only variable that might possibly change to shift something. I couldn't keep having anxiety attacks, but I couldn't drink. So then I started to believe that maybe it's possible to change. And I started to take actions that started to change my brain. And that's what's on offer for you, is to take action and to do things that can change your brain. Now I want to tell you about one of my students that I had in the very beginning when I first started teaching about anxiety. This was a passion for me, and maybe this is where you're at. Maybe you have a lot of anxiety and you want to help people with anxiety. That's a lot of us. That might be you. That might be where you're at right now. You really want to get through the anxiety so you can help people with your anxiety. If that's true for you, it's possible. It is possible. It is possible to change your brain and then to go around and to teach people what you did to get free. It's actually very rewarding. So I would encourage that. I want to tell you how my student actually got free, how she instantly ended her anxiety attacks. So when I started teaching people how to overcome anxiety, first I did it in person in my living room, and then I did it at a sober living home, and then I put it on the internet, and I made a course called Digital Anxiety Pill. But when I was at the sober living home, I went there and had the first session with them. There was 4 sessions over 4 weeks. They were 1 hour each. The first 1 hour session, I taught the student how to not have an anxiety attack. She came back the next week and said, I did not have an anxiety attack in this situation that always gave me an anxiety attack, which for her was on public transportation. It's called BART. It's in the Bay Area. She would go on the underground train to work and Starbucks in Oakland from San Francisco and would have an anxiety attack every time. I taught her how not to have one. She has not had one since. She overcame her anxiety disorders. This is possible, whether it's sitting in front of a meeting, having anxiety attacks every Friday night. By the way, since then, I have also led a recovery meeting as like the chair or the secretary and not had anxiety attacks. We can learn how to not have anxiety attacks. I'm going to tell you exactly what I taught this student that enabled her to not have anxiety attacks anymore. Okay, so I told her, when you notice it coming on, when you're in the trigger and you start to feel the anxious feelings and you start to think the anxious thoughts, become mindful of your environment. Look, there are many ways to do this. This is just one. So I said, experience the world through your senses. What do you see? Look around. Do you see a sign that you can read? What do you feel? There was like a pole, right? There's poles on buses. I was like, put your hand on that pole and feel it. What does it feel like in your hand? Notice what it feels like. Bring your mind into the area where your bottom is sitting on the seat. Do you notice your bottom, the connection of your skin, your pants, your body onto the seat? What does it feel like? Bring your mind into the moment in any way that you can. Anchor on the present moment. This is how we get free. This is how we take our mind off of the anxious thoughts and off of the anxious feelings, is by becoming aware of what's actually happening in the moment. Anxiety is not centered in the moment. It's happening in the moment. It might be triggered out of nowhere. Sometimes anxiety does come out of nowhere. So when anxiety comes out of nowhere, what do? We become mindful. What do I see? Think about 3 things you could see. Look at 3 things that you can see. What do I hear? What do you actually hear? Do you hear people talking? Do you hear birds chirping? Focus on what you can hear. What can I touch? Can I touch a microphone? Can I touch my body? Can I rub my hands together? What do I notice when I rub my hands together? Go ahead and do it now. Rub your hands together. What do you notice when you rub your hands together? I notice right now mine are a little clammy, but that's because I'm drinking coffee while I'm here having this chat with you, courageous bestie. So what do you notice? What do you notice with your senses, with your sight, with your smell, with your touch, with your taste, if you're tasting something, right? What do you notice when you drop out of your mind and out of your emotions and into your senses? What do you notice? What do you experience? That's what she did. Like I said, every time she took the BART, the underground transportation, public transportation from San Francisco to Oakland to go to Starbucks to work, she would have an anxiety attack. And then she learned this, what I just taught you. I unpacked it deeper with her over this hour, right? I'm trying to give you the condensed version here. And then the next time she got on the bus or the BART, she noticed that she was having the anxious thoughts. She noticed the anxious feelings and she grounded into her senses. She grabbed the pole and noticed what the pole felt like. She looked and could see what she could see and hear what she could hear. So it's about becoming aware of what's happening in the moment. It's a game changer. It might not happen the first time. It happened the first time for her. It's going to happen how it's going to happen for you. But if you take the actions that have been proven with science and with testimony of real humans doing these things, but also backed by science. There are so many scientific studies that you can look up about how mindfulness affects stress and anxiety. And so when you do the practices that yield these results, you're more likely to get these results, right? So if you want something, you have to move in that direction with your actions. She deliberately decided to be mindful of her environment instead of letting her thoughts spin out on anxiety and her feelings spin out on anxiety. There's something here, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you're somebody like an anxious person, like I used to be, is that it's what I call a thought-feeling loop. We have an anxious thought, or maybe what comes first is the anxiety is out of nowhere and it's an anxious feeling. And because we feel anxious, we think more anxious thoughts. And then because we're thinking more anxious thoughts, we're literally cascading into our body a biochemical experience of more anxiety, more adrenaline, more cortisol, more stress hormones. So when we're having those anxious thoughts, it's like pouring stress chemicals into our system. And what does that feel like? It feels like anxiety. Our heart's going faster, our palms are sweaty, things are racing, our stomach feels queasy. Whatever the feelings are, the symptoms of anxiety, it's a biochemical experience in our body related to our thoughts and our feelings. Sometimes it's the past comes in, it comes out of nowhere, and we're not really sure why we're anxious. I've had an anxiety attack out of nowhere before, right? But often it's our thoughts or our feelings, and then we spin out into the anxiety attack. So we have to notice it before it spins out. Notice when we're starting down that path. It's much easier to get off of the thought-feeling loop, the downward anxiety spiral, sooner rather than later, because the momentum picks up. More chemicals are dumped because then we have to discharge them from our system. So if we've already dumped a lot of these stress chemicals in our system through our thoughts or our feelings, or it just came out of nowhere, then we got to process those. Movement is really good to process the biochemical experience that we're having. Move it through our body. Do jumping jacks if you can. Dance if you can. Something. Move it. Move that body. Process it. Get it to move through your body. It's a biochemical experience. It's not personal. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean it's going to be here forever. It's not a life sentence. That's not how I see it. And what I'm going to tell you is, even if you believe anxiety is forever, what if you're wrong? What if it's not forever? What if it's possible that somebody ever once in the world overcame it? And if it's possible for somebody, what if it's possible for somebody else? And if it's possible for multiple people, what if it's possible for you? And if it's possible for you, how would you behave differently the next time you notice the anxious thoughts or notice the anxious feelings? Would you take different actions that may lead up to a different result? That's the invitation here. That's why I'm making this podcast for you. Like I said, I haven't had an anxiety attack in over a decade. I don't need to hear this. Somebody might need to hear this. I think it's one of the most important things that I can share about. It's what I wish I knew when I was in the depth of it all. When I was struggling with anxiety and I was waking up in anxiety attacks and I was having panic attacks constantly, I couldn't even go to a recovery meeting without having an anxiety attack, right? How do you stay sober through all that? You got to find a way out, and it can't be alcohol. Right? So it's really difficult when my whole life, alcohol was my anti-anxiety med. Well, I was on benzos too. I was on Klonopin. But when alcohol and benzos are no longer in my life because I've gone to rehab, I got sober, like I kind of drank myself into sobriety, I'm going to have to learn how to have that new relationship with my anxiety if I want to be free. I can no longer use alcohol to get free. And besides, alcohol wasn't a great path to freedom anyways, because a lot of reasons, but one of them is because it calmed the anxiety at first, but then it made it worse. The hangover, the hangxiety made the anxiety worse. So it was kind of a lie that alcohol made the anxiety better, because ultimately it made it worse. So if I want to have a new relationship with my arousal, right, with my stress chemicals, with my anxiety, my stress, my emotions, then it needs to be like, without alcohol, what's that new relationship going to be like? Can I become curious of what I'm feeling inside my body? Can I become mindful when I'm having those feelings come up or those thoughts come up? Can I learn how to be more skilled with my emotions and my thoughts? Can I be more the director of my thoughts? Can I use my mind? Can I learn how to use my mind in a way that is more empowering instead of being a slave to my mind? So this is so interesting that our thoughts aren't true. Our thoughts aren't true. So many of us, quite often, and yeah, that probably happens daily to me, a thought comes into our head and we believe the thought because the thought comes into our head, so we think it must be true. But our thoughts are not inherently true. Most of them are not true. Most of our thoughts are limiting, right? So I like to ask myself always, like, what's an empowering thought? I choose to only believe empowering thoughts. That's a belief that I decided to believe. I decided to instill that belief into me. I choose to only believe empowering thoughts. It means that sometimes I'll be delusional because not all empowering thoughts are true. But I'd rather be delusional for the sake of my freedom and open and expand my life to get free. When it comes to anxiety and anxiety attacks, I think it's worth it to choose to have an open mind that maybe it's possible for someone else. Maybe it's possible for me. It is possible for me. And to start to take those new actions to see if you get a new result. And it's not going to happen once, right? We don't just try it once and then it works, although it did for my student who was taking the BART to Oakland. It happened to her the first time she tried it. It is possible to get free from anxiety attacks like that. It's happened to my students and clients before. It can happen. It might not. But is it willing to work towards it? For me, I was willing to take as long as it took for me to overcome my anxiety and my anxiety attacks. I didn't care how long it took. That was the only thing I wanted. I wanted to feel comfortable in my skin. I wanted to live. To drink was to die. That was obvious by my experience. It almost killed me. So I had to figure out how to have a new relationship with my anxiety, and it's possible. It's totally possible.
Oh, hey, what's up? You know what? I was just thinking maybe you wanted a roadmap. Maybe you want a roadmap out of stress, a roadmap out of anxiety, a roadmap out of intense emotions. You are in luck, my friend, my bestie. Introducing the roadmap to freedom, yours today for free. Just click below the first link in the description, the roadmap to freedom. You're going to love it. All right, bye.
I want to share with you also something recent, a recent time that I used these tools to not have an anxiety attack. So like I said, I have not had an anxiety attack since 2012. It doesn't mean that I will never have one again. I just haven't. It's been over a decade. And so this is what I do when the anxiety comes so that I don't spin out. And now it's not very frequent that this happens, but I have the tools to not have an anxiety attack. That's what's on offer here. So I was on a flight like 2 years ago. I was in Southeast Asia flying around, and I don't know if you know this, but some flights, some planes do spray chemicals in the air, essentially pesticides, and those chemicals can have reactions in our body. Look, I don't know that it's all flights. I don't know that happens all the time. I did some Googling. I read some peer-reviewed science research papers, and I saw this. What happened is this. We were not in turbulence, by the way, but I was sitting on a plane, and I started to feel the anxiety coming. So this is how to not have an anxiety attack. I'm on the plane, the anxiety's coming, I have anxious thoughts. Oh my God, my throat's getting tight. Oh my God, my heart is beating fast. And then I was like, oh my God, am I gonna go into an anxiety attack? I haven't had an anxiety attack forever. Is this gonna be an anxiety attack? And then I noticed that the feelings are more intense, and I was like, wait a minute. If I keep thinking like this, I will have an anxiety attack. I gotta stop these thoughts, and I gotta stop these feelings from getting worse. I gotta take control from the downward anxiety spiral if I don't want to spiral out. So what I did is I went to the bathroom and I washed my hands with cold water. So while I'm walking to the bathroom, I'm already changing my mind. I'm walking through a plane, I'm going to the bathroom, right? And so I'm kind of having some new thoughts because I'm literally moving my body. I get cold water in my hands. I know that helps with our parasympathetic nervous system. I'm doing it something new, like not thinking and feeling about the anxiety. I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my feelings. And then when I walk out of the bathroom, that's when I smelled it. I smelled the chemicals on the plane. Now, I'm hypersensitive, so I think I have, it's probably also why I had all the anxiety, right? I'm like hypersensitive. I know that about myself. My nervous system, my sensory system is hypersensitive. It makes for an overwhelming life, right? And that's why I've devoted my entire life to learning about the nervous system and to talking about it, to teaching about it, to healing about it, to all the things about the nervous system, because I'm hypersensitive. You know, I am very much want to know how to be good with the nervous system because mine's just a little bit more sensitive. That has a lot of gifts to it, but it also has some responsibilities if I want to travel with more ease. So anyways, I walk out of the bathroom, I smell it. I can smell the chemicals in the air, and I'm like, oh my God. And so I sit down, and I know what it is. I already Googled the thing. I already knew that some flights spray some chemicals to kill bugs from some countries. It's an international flight. And so I sit down and I'm just like, right, okay, so I am breathing chemicals which are creating these actual feelings and symptoms in my body. The symptoms of a tight throat, the symptoms of like a heartbeat racing. This is from the chemicals that I'm breathing. So my job is to calm my body down, to soothe my body, to get into my parasympathetic nervous system. I'm having a reaction to a chemical. That is the story that I was telling myself. Now you might say, Kirsten, it's not true. They weren't spraying chemicals on the plane. Okay, and you know what? You may be right. But what I'm telling you is the story we tell ourselves is going to determine how we think and how we feel about what is happening. I believed, still to this day, 100% believe they were spraying a chemical. I smelled it. I'm having a reaction to it. But I chose to believe the story that is true, which I 100% believe. And because I'm believing that this is a chemical reaction, now I'm just soothing myself and I'm calming down and I'm no longer in a panic about it. I'm like, all right, well, I want my throat to like loosen up. So I'm going to do some breathing right now and I'm going to calm my body down. I'm going to relax my body. The story that you choose in the moment is going to determine a lot. You could choose a story that when I activate my parasympathetic nervous system, I know I'll calm my body down. This is truth because, quick review, just real quick, we have our sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, stress, anxiety. We have our parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So there are ways when we find that we're activated, when we're aroused with stress, anxiety, intense emotions, something overwhelming, that is our sympathetic nervous system being on. And so it's wise to get it off, to turn on our parasympathetic nervous system. So that's what I was doing. Because I had a new story, a story of I'm having a chemical reaction here. But we also have a chemical reaction through our thinking. Our anxious thoughts release a biochemical experience into our body that creates the symptoms of anxiety. So what we're thinking is really important because it's going to create the experience in our body. So choose to have an empowering thought. So when I was very actively wanted to calm my parasympathetic nervous system down so that my breathing could become normal, my heart rate could go down, it did. It worked. My thoughts were no longer on, oh my God, I'm going to have an anxiety attack. Oh my God, my heart is beating faster. Oh my God, all that stuff is going to make it even worse, right? We know that. We know that because we've been there. The new story, maybe I can calm myself down. Maybe I could turn on my parasympathetic nervous system by doing slow, deep breaths. Maybe I can use my mindfulness practice and become aware of how I'm experiencing the world through my senses. Maybe I can alter this biochemical experience that I'm having by intentionally calming myself down. There are so many stories that are way more empowering that we can choose to believe and think in those moments than this is going to be forever. I don't like my life. This is overwhelming. I hate anxiety, whatever it is. The story we're telling ourselves in that moment is going to determine some of those future moments. It might not happen right away. It might not solve your problem right away. The invitation is to try something new for a new result. I'm curious, what has worked for you? What has worked to talk yourself or to work yourself or to meditate yourself or levitate yourself out of an anxiety attack? What has worked for you? Drop it in the comments. Let's open up the conversation to how freedom is available. I've already unpacked many different ways to walk yourself out of having an anxiety attack, how to end anxiety attacks in sobriety. There's more ways. I didn't name them all. You might have a way that I don't know about. Maybe the way that if you have the courage to, in the comments, write about something that's worked for you, maybe somebody else who is reading this will read your comment and they'll get free. Let's share the love. Let's share the freedom, right? Wouldn't it be great if we all never had an anxiety attack again? But we gotta take control over what we're letting ourselves think and feel in those moments. We gotta go in with our consciousness and we gotta shift things up. That's what I'm all about. It's about learning how to use our consciousness to change our entire lives, one thought, one feeling at a time. We can redirect our lives away from this anxiety spiral and into conscious creation, because we don't just want the anxiety attacks to end, do we? We also want to consciously and deliberately create our lives. We want to live our big dreams, especially if you're anxious and sober. Maybe you want to help people. You want to help people through anxiety. You want to share your inspirational message with the world. You want to build a business and give back. There's big things that you want to do, but we got to get that thorn of anxiety out of your body first, right? The first things first, we have to stop panicking. If we're panicking, there's no way that I could have done a video when I'm up Friday night at that recovery at the toothbrush meeting, having a panic attack every time I'm up there every Friday night. You can't make a video while you're doing that. It'd be very difficult. So you can learn how to have that new relationship with your thoughts and your feelings first. Overcome the anxiety attacks first. But the same tools that we use to overcome the anxiety attacks are the ones that are going to open up our entire life. It's not just about not suffering. It's also about fully living and coming alive. It's about recreating your entire life. This is a big deal. It's a big deal. If you let yourself believe that maybe freedom is available for you, that maybe you can only believe in empowering thoughts, then maybe your whole entire life can change. This is what's on offer for you. How are you going to think about your life? What story are you telling yourself about what's possible for you? If you change your story about what's possible for you, how do you think that would impact your life? There is freedom available for you. Choose an empowering narrative that you want to live by and step into that narrative. You get to recreate your life any moment. Today is a great day to recreate your life, to live more empowered. All right. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I want to see you in the comments. Let me know any other topics you want me to cover on the Sobriety Bestie podcast. I would love to have this be a conversation. So please share your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like it, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a beautiful day.